Martin Gundersen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for being here.
It's great to have you here. I wish you were actually in here in the studio. I'm sure you're working on plenty of stuff that you can take to the studio next time. Is that correct?
Yeah, I hope so. It's a big industry, but we're trying to get through it and trying to figure out who is working with who. But it's hard work.
Cool. So I don't tell my boss this, but I'm very envious of your job. You have like the coolest job you could possibly have. And I was wondering if we could start out with just like an introduction to what do you do, and tell us a little about your job.
So I work at NRK, the Norwegian public broadcaster, and there I focus on topics as IT security, privacy, and social media. And I'm part of a small team where people have different jobs. Some work part-time as journalists and mostly do coding. Others do more strategic insights and trend analysis, and then maybe write something. And then I'm the journalist trying to get people to write something and write myself.
Awesome. So you have like a dedicated team to this little cyber world then, I guess.
Yeah, we're a small team. I think we're 7 people doing different things related to digitalization.
Cool. So how long have you been a journalist for?
3.5 years at NRK, and before that I was actually supposed to be a mechanical engineer, but in the end, while I was writing my final, what do you call it? The final exam? Thesis, yeah. When I was writing my thesis, I figured out that I was not super motivated to be an engineer. So I felt like journalist fit me perfectly.
Hey, well, I'm glad you took that choice. We're all glad. I've been looking forward to this podcast for a while here now. So, when you're talking with your friends and you say, I don't know, it could be shoes or belt or whatever you say, and it comes up on your Instagram or your Facebook as a recommended ad. Have you experienced that before?
The funny thing is that I've always found it super strange that people are creeped out by ads, because I've been so into this ecosystem myself. So I'm like, yeah, but like they are tracking us on what we're doing online. So it's mostly kind of bad data that they try to package as super personalized ads. So they're like two competing worlds. Either it's like super creepy or it's like super bad, low quality personalization. So I've always like found it interesting that people feel like they're listened to by their phone. I've never had that feeling myself, but when I started looking into it, I kind of felt like even though the end result is not that good, it's super creepy how a lot of companies get access to our data, and then we never know what their names are, what they're actually doing, and their privacy policies are like, we have a lot of different products, we use your data in a very good manner, but it's super hard for us to explain how it works. And then I'm like, what is actually happening around here?
So that feeds in perfectly to our topic for today. You decided to do something about that.
Yeah, so last year, or 2 years ago, we started to think about, could we access location data where our phone tells us I'm here, and we found out there's a lot of companies called data brokers that get access to mobile app data. And then we bought for I think £2,000 or £3,000 or dollars location data for
right?
yes, 30,000 kroners for 140,000 Norwegian cell phones in the year 2019, and then we could follow these phones for from a couple of days to over 200 days at the most. And some phones pinged maybe once an hour, some once a day. In some periods, it could be by the minute and many times a minute. And we kind of felt like, wow, we stumbled upon this massive data that what they are used for in the end could be a product that is okay, but like the data exists there, and there's an enormous privacy risk to the people being tracked.
First of all, where do you go to buy that? Like you don't just go on Amazon and say, "Oh, location data for Norwegians." Boom.
Actually, we just Google it, location data brokers, and then from there we found different websites with different amounts of information. So some data brokers have more information about their product, others have very little, and we kind of used the emails and the forms they have. Most of the companies have quite good sales funnels since this is the product they want to sell.
That's what they're doing.
They're also... And they're also, you mentioned Amazon. Amazon have sold or have listed location data. This was reported by Wise just recently. And you could also go to sites which lists data products where location data is one part of it, but there are multiple of these aggregation sites.
Wow. So how was that process? Like you just, you just got to choose the data set you wanted and then you imported it? Did they ask you any questions? Was there any sort of like, any sort of safety checks from their side, or was it just anybody, I could just go in there and buy data about the same thing you did, basically? Our
feeling was that there was not that many safeguards that we were aware of when we contacted different brokers. The one broker we finally bought access to location data from, we didn't talk to them by phone or have a more rigorous contact before the sale went through. So we can't say that anybody could buy location data. I don't think if you say that I'm an ex-boyfriend that wants to track. We said we were a data journalist. We didn't. We said we would use the data for city planning, a project about how that works here in Norway, maybe find different patterns. We ended up working on the privacy issues and not on city planning. But kind of the problem that is highlighted also is that when you sell this data, you don't have control about what it's used for. So depending on who you ask, they will say that there are good contracts. The companies do due diligence. They know who they're selling to. And then we kind of hear murmurs from different parties asking, is the due diligence good enough in most cases? Could there be shell companies buying this data, selling it to governments? Could it be sold to envious ex-husbands? But they have a backstory that enables them to buy the data. It's hard knowing, and that's also kind of like the underlying issue with this industry. It's hard knowing how it operates and what safeguards there are.
So yeah, long story short, the conclusion is that if you were able to do that, then so would some foreign intelligence agency or an ex-boyfriend or somebody bad or something that you don't want to have that data, I guess.
Yeah, and there was recently published a NATO report that says that they believe location data and other type of commercially provided data to be a weak link in national security, because they believe it will be easy to track military personnel, that we also showed in our reporting, but also that you could use this for purposes if you're a state actor.
All right. So that was the first project that you did, and then you decided to build on that. Tell us about how many apps do you have on your phone these days?
I think I have a lot of apps yet. When I did a count up, I found I had 160 apps on my phone, my regular phone. Most of those don't have that many permissions, but I am very regular in that regard. Most people have around 100 or more apps on their phone. And most people are not aware which permissions these apps have. And there has been a gradual evolution here where especially iPhones has been better at telling you, oh, this app actually asks for your location and it pings you this often. And iPhone has been better to say that, oh, this app actually want to know your contact lists. And our phones are kind of like a silo with a lot of interesting data where the phone manufacturers are now clamping down on a lot of the misuse or perceived misuse, but it's kind of like a slow evolution here. And the experiment we did was that we had an Android phone. I can show you the phone actually.
You still have it?
Yeah, I still have it. So this is a Samsung Galaxy phone. It's not the most up-to-date and best phone, but we installed a lot of apps on that phone that we thought were linked to the location data industry in some way. So we knew from our first project the names of some apps, and then we talked to mobile analytics companies that knew of some of the apps and knew of some of the brokers that could give us a few more app names. And then we also went to Google and searched for the different names of the location data brokers and used keywords like privacy policy, location data, and from there we got a couple of new apps. And after we installed all these apps, I kind of forgot about this project because it was really time consuming and it kind of went in the back end for a couple of months. And I had my phone with me for the duration of the period. So I could, so we knew the phone was collecting location data, but we didn't know which apps were sending data to whom. So in the middle of the summer, I started creating an Excel sheet with all the names of the data brokers. And then I started sending what's called subject access requests, which is something under European privacy law, the GDPR. You can ask a company, I want to know all the data you have about me. And also, I want to have a copy of all the data you have about me.
How many people or companies did you send that to?
I think I've sent to more than 60 companies. We started with 20, I think, and then we kind of found more companies as we worked on it.
Yeah, and was it like, do those companies make that hard to find, or do they actually have like a GDPR website that it's like, yeah, here, we know what you're gonna ask for, press this button.
It's super complicated sometimes. Some companies have the email of privacy at company or DPO, which is the privacy officer at the company, and you can send that email, and then you kind of know it will be read by somebody with a privacy background. But a lot of companies only have info or sales at, or they have contact or hello. So then I've written, please send this to the privacy team or the engineering team on your company, and then just hope that somebody will kind of understand that this is a subject access request. And a lot of these email bounced. So I had to create a lot of new columns where it was like emails that didn't work. And then I just like went through all the possible emails a company could use. And then when it didn't bounce, I wrote the day, and then there's you have to respond to these requests within 30 days. So I went back after 30 days and checked how they responded, and some did and some don't. And if they didn't, I sent a new mail where it was like, could you please respond? And then somebody sometimes said, oh, we don't have data on you, that's why we didn't respond. Or it was, we need a couple of days, we'll figure it out. And then they went looking into their archives.
But that's like, well, first of all, that'd be really easy to spell. Oh, we don't have any data about you. Here you go. And then that's an easy way to get off the hook, I guess. But aren't these companies legally required to actually provide you with that within 30 days? Or
yeah, they're legally required, but what is the penalty for not doing it? They can always kind of plead ignorance and say that, we did our best. We have now responded. So it kind of like the escalation is that I have to file a complaint with the Norwegian Data Protection Authority, or if they're based in another European country, say France, I need to file in France, and then they need to handle the complaint, and you can kind of like think the months go by here, because for each request, if if I had to complain to a data protection authority, something I haven't done because I felt it would be too much work.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like also, since there's so many companies, it's kind of a resource question. Do you want to kind of spend 3 months getting a proper yes or no?
So the ones that did respond, did they send you, did you get like a delivery guy on the door with the big, huge stack of papers, like boom, or what kind of format was it in? Is it an Excel sheet or?
Oh, it's very different. So some companies have a quite nice pipeline and some don't. So some companies will say they respond to the email with a zipped file, which is password protected, and then maybe I'll get a password on Signal, or I will get it in another mail, or they have a kind of a self-serve platform where I'm asked to log in. And depending on the system, usually the data is provided in Excel or a raw CSV file. So if we're going to talk about Ventel, which is kind of the most interesting company that had my data, they had data they have 75,000 rows of location data on me. So from the 15th of February last year, I could follow my movements until the day they kind of said, this is the final date in the data set we have on you when they sent me the data. And I could follow myself going on trips. I could see myself visiting my grandmother. I could see myself going home to Stavanger, where I grew up. And I could follow myself around when I went to work. While I were at home, I found myself going out drinking with friends. And the data is quite interesting because it's so precise, and it's multiple parts, but it's a latitude and a longitude, and that says here in the world, just like this precise point, you are here. And then they also include an accuracy measurement, which the phone provides, and it's usually from 4 to 20 meters. Or if you're inside, or if there's bad reception, it could be more. So it could be 200 meters or 1,000 meters. But usually, like in most cases, it's 4 meters to 20 meters.
Wow. That's why you as journalists leave your phone at home when you're going to go meet confidential sources then, I guess, huh?
Yeah, and that's like, it's super creepy how much our phone gives up our information. So we have Bluetooth devices, we have IP addresses are shared widely, and you never kind of know which information piece could be problematic. And it really depends on the threat actor you have and how worried you should be. But it's, I think we're getting to a point where we haven't seen a journalist blowing their sources because of metadata based on location that we know of, but it could happen right around the corner, and it wouldn't surprise me that location data or other types of metadata have been used where two phones have met to kind of piece together likely who was a source or who had this meeting. We know that cell phone records and browsing patterns and when people share secret documents, usually the printers water stamps the documents, but you can't see the water stamp. And also most printers have a big hard drive saving the documents and timestamps. So it's kind of quite easy to figure out where information goes. And I think like kind of like the as marketers, it's not usually the personalization is perfect, but in most cases it's better than nothing. And I think this kind of, it could help if you're doing a leak investigation or other ways, having this kind of like small pieces pointing in a specific direction.
Yeah, so the point is you can do a lot with that data, just location data alone, yeah.
And I think we kind of see that already when there have been what's called law cases.
Court cases, yeah.
So there's been quite a lot of criminal cases where but in the US and Norway and Europe, people are being surprised by how much information you can get when the police ask to get your phone. And say Apple devices with health apps installed share a lot about heart rates, and that could, with the right timestamp, could say if you were in a collision or if you were in a heightened mood. And I feel like these like small tidbits of information that in themselves don't look interesting in the moment could be a deciding factor in a criminal case.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, why was your heart rate so quick when you were sleeping, you say? Oof. So back to the, what was it, Ventel, you said. How'd that end? Or did it end?
So it kind of like, it started a puzzle because Ventel is a US location data company working with clients such as ICE, which is the Border Enforcement Agency in the US, and they have had other clients. FBI have been mentioned, and also IRS. And we didn't know what they had, why they had my data, and what they wanted to use it for. And we kind of tried to ask them follow-up questions about like, what partners did you share this information? And they say, we shared your information with commercial partners of us for purposes such as, and then a long list of purposes. And when we asked follow-up questions as part of the subject access requests, they didn't want to specify closer. And so it was kind of like a big question, where does this data finally go? When we asked them for, when we went to press, they said that they hadn't shared my data with ICE or CBP, which is the Customs and Border Patrol, but they didn't want to specify which other government agencies or other they did not share the data with. And so from there, we kind of knew that this data ends up at a company that does nothing close to marketing or what you would kind of like think about when you think about like mobile apps. And then we asked, where did you get that data from? And they said, oh, we got that from our mother company, Gravy Analytics. And the Gravy Analytics, we sent a new response to them, a new request. And their response was, we got this data from two companies. One is a French company called Predisio, and another is a US and English-based company called Complementix. And then we sent new requests to those companies. And from there, we pieced through that there was two apps, one from Sygic, a navigation app, and then a sarcastic weather app called Funny Weather. That was kind of like the two apps we had installed that had shared this data. And we could kind of see that the data then ended up at Ventel, and then we asked a lot of questions about like, but how did it actually get there? And there are a lot of questions we still haven't answered, but we kind of have some answers to that.
So what you're saying kind of reminds me of like, you know how we always say like, yeah, well, the NSA is watching you anyway, right? The Big Brother's watching you. Somebody's watching you. I did never really, you just taught me right now that it's actually coming through like normal apps on my phone. Like, it's just, they're just selling my data and that gets sold to government, to non-government. That's literally how it works. So they are, you know, so you're not an American citizen, by the way, are you? The American
no, not an American citizen.
Shouldn't have like an interest in tracking you for any reason, but and they probably don't, but they have the ability to very easily, I guess.
Yeah, so like the big problem with this, and there are multiple news outlets in the world that are trying to like figure out like what is allowed and what is not allowed. And in the US, as long as you don't spy on American citizens, it's actually nothing to worry about. You can do most things legally. If it's American citizens, location data is commercially bought data, and there are the state in the US is now using the legal theory that this data is not in breach of the Fourth Amendment, so you can use this data against Americans. This is in dispute, and there are multiple senators asking question about the legal interpretation. But it's an open question for like how broad is the use, what are actually the legal limits. We asked the U.S. ICE, we asked ICE and the Border Protection Agency if they could use this data in Europe and against Europeans. I don't think we got a proper response that actually kind of informed us about the nuances of the limits. And here in Europe, we have more rigorous privacy frameworks, but at the same time, when state uses data, and usually it's for intelligence or for defense purposes, it's hard to actually know what is the answers, and the legal system is giving them a lot of leeways, and they want to protect their source and method. So I think the broad response is that we have confirmation that US agencies have used location data, and they've used it abroad, and the US military have both location data and used it abroad, but we don't know in which specific cases, how broad, and how much of that have been against European citizens.
So I guess my conclusion from this is there's a lot of different entities that can't easily figure out where you are or where you've been if they really want to, I guess. And I started thinking about that. You concluded with the same, I'm assuming.
I think it's hard knowing, because just our apps is one of multiple ways we can be tracked. So we have a computer and a phone, which both shares a lot of data without actually just by being reused. And it's hard knowing what data is relevant for which purposes.
Yeah. So I actually have like a little series going, and you're the beginning of it because you had the cool story. You actually did like a hardcore story about it. But I have another podcast guest coming in afterwards, and she's going to talk about the concept of lawful intercept, which is like, the government's intercepting your messages and stuff, and what you can figure out from me and you. We chatted on Signal, right? And they say that's like super secure. It's like a lot of people in the security world use it, and I'm wondering, like, okay, we say it's secure, but can they see that I'm talking to you? Can they see what I'm writing? So I'm gonna figure that out for us, and maybe I'll put you two in contact. But
I'll look forward to it.
Yeah, I also started thinking about, okay, in that chat with that future podcast guest, I asked her what can I do to, and I mentioned you in this podcast, and like, what can we do to prevent things from tracking us? And she pointed me to some videos she made, and so now I have, whenever I surf on the internet, I have two browsers. I have one for work, which is like I only use for work, and that doesn't have, I'm not logged in on Facebook, I'm not logged in on Google, I'm not logged in on anything that's related to me, right? And of course I'm using a VPN. But then I have another browser that's more open, right? That I can that's for my personal use.
How plugins have the normal life.
Have a normal life, right? But it's very hard. It's a lot of work to actually like manage that and apply that to your whole life. Like, it's very easy to go from Google to DuckDuckGoose, right? I'm gonna put a bunch of advice from both of us in the show notes. But that thing with your phone, with all these apps, like either you want the apps or you don't, right? And you can't really you can't turn this off anyway, or can you? Can you prevent what happened to you from happening? Is that even feasible if you want to live like a normal person?
I think you kind of will meet yourself in the door a couple of times where you will have to do paranoid decisions, where people around you would maybe think you're going too far if you're going to be super protective of yourself. And it's a very wide gulf where you can choose different kind of how extreme you want to be. And I think like some of the simplest things you can do is don't use Chrome as the base engine, and don't log into Facebook on your primary or work browser. And then on your phone, you can turn off Add ID. You can both do that on Android and iOS. And then you can go into, if you have a newer Android operating system or if you have iOS, you can see which permissions your apps get. And from there, you should kind of ask yourself, how well do I know this app publisher? Is this, say, a European company? That would most likely make it more privacy safe because they've been more, they should be more worried about privacy laws. Is it a publisher which is a name brand? If it's a name brand, there's more, there's a bigger brand issue of breaching privacy, which kind of should help you in some ways. And when you go down, you can kind of say that some apps and some services, it's not something you should have because your threat model is either that you're worried at some point you have shared too much data, or you have a work where there's some parts you want to protect more, or if you're in your private life you kind of feel unsure how much you want to share. And I think it's a good way of thinking is that on a personal level, most days we won't do anything that is so important to guard that we need to do these measures. But there will be days in your life where either you're following a friend to a rehab clinic or yourself in seeking health, have health problems and seeking help, or you kind of have work-related situations which needs to be handled more delicately, where if you haven't these routines already, it's too late doing it when you need it.
I'm not gonna lie, I read your article and you had all their tips in there, right? And I went. I'm a paranoid security guy, so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna check these things. I thought I was like, okay, I'm pretty secure, right? But I subsequently went through and I denied permissions to everything, like in my phone, like permissions for things, for example, like Signal or Facebook having access to my pictures. I just took it all away, but then you quickly realize like it's really nice to have an integration. Like you really do want to send a picture to your friend every once in a while. Like you need that. So that paranoia, there's a very they've been really good at they make it hard. Do you want to enjoy all these benefits, or do you want to be secure? Even though I don't even think it's possible anymore to be totally secure or private.
Yeah, you'll have a social cost being very private, and it kind of it's I think it's hard to kind of be an outlier in a privacy field. If you want to be very protective, it will have kind of social or costs, or it will make you kind of slower in your everyday life and in your workday, because you would sometimes say, I can't talk to you on this platform, or we need to do this because and then it could be take half an hour more to actually do a simple task.
Right. Yeah, one of your tips actually was to not use Chrome. So I uninstalled Chrome, but then I had to reinstall it because this program we're using right now has to go on Chrome. Oh, yeah. But hey, Grindr. I'm not going to pick on Grindr, but they just got 100 million kroner fine from some. I'm not sure if it was because of the work that Forbrukerrådet or the
that is for
Council
I can.
yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, so the Consumer Council have a report that went out last year. Now the Norwegian Data Protection Authority issued a preliminary fine. So Grindr will have opportunity to kind of say we don't agree with the fine. But the basic issue here is that Grindr shared location data and the cell phone's unique ad ID, as well as the app name. So Grindr, and then they also have gay and bi and other kind of words implicitly saying that you're part of a sexual minority. And these things combined made the fine to be the proposed fine to be, I think, 10 million euros, or close to 9, I think, which is very high to be in Norway, and I think it will be top 10, 20 if it gets finalized in the end. I think the highest fine up to date now is 50 million euros in the European zone after GDPR. So it's a quite big fine, especially since Grindr is a quite small player in the app ecosystem compared to, say, Facebook or Google.
Yeah, do you know what that biggest ticket, who that went to? I know that I have a few random examples.
I think it is
tickets.
Facebook or Google, but I usually
it's a
forget.
Big player, yeah. But yeah, they just fork it out, like they don't even care. That's the chump change for them. But yeah, I mean, Grindr at least, that could be very, as you can imagine, very, very sensitive. There's a lot of people out there that don't want their parents, for example, knowing that they have Grindr, I would assume.
There is a part of the community that uses Grindr that is openly gay and open about them meeting men, or they're open about being bisexual. But there's also quite a big community, as I understand it now, to be called discreet, that don't openly advertise that they use the apps. So they will not show their face. They will not usually have told family or friends that they're gay. Some have told some friends. And for these people, having this data out there stored for a couple of years, and there could be a data leak, or it could be sold to a company that has really bad privacy safeguards. It's kind of like a long tail issue where they don't know if this could have a consequence for them. And the central claim for the Norwegian Data Protection Authority is that people were not aware of what they'd say yes to when they accepted to use Grindr and the sharing of location data with these extra IDs.
And I'm assuming Grindr's privacy policy is 30 hours long to read. Not that I've looked at it.
I think they've changed their policy and how they do it a couple of times now. So I'm not sure how the final one is.
So just in conclusion, where are you on this now? I know that you met a lot of cool people along this journey of yours now, and you've worked. You said you've worked with a lot of your colleagues, and do you have any cool stories to share about the work that's being done on their side, or what you're working with these days?
I can go into ongoing reporting, but I can say that my reporting on the location data industry is kind of a part of a bigger, richer history about privacy in Europe and in the world, where the GDPR came in 2018, and it kind of helped a lot about raising awareness and then raising the cost for not doing privacy-friendly things. But kind of the fight about how privacy in the end will be for us in our everyday lives, and how companies work with privacy, and how much surveillance in general there is in our society. Those are not questions that are finished. Those are questions that kind of will continue for a long time. And I think maybe our reporting was kind of a small part of saying that it's really hard for data protection authorities in Europe going after American companies. And it's really hard for the data protection authorities to find apps that collaborate with these companies, because we found that an app shared data with one company doing mostly marketing, which could be fine, which is something I knew when I consented in these apps. But then it's shared with a new company, and then it's shared with a new company. And I think kind of this complex and hard to see ecosystem is something we see in a lot of this data industry, where it's really hard getting into the core of the problems, because it's so hard to understand where the data flows and who it's shared with.
Right. So it's not over, in other words.
Yeah, I think we're just on the beginning to map a lot of these data broker industries.
Well, Mr. Gundersen, thank you so much for all the fantastic work you've done on behalf of the privacy world. We appreciate it. and we're rooting you on. I shouldn't be happy when a company gets 100 million kroner fine, but I was pretty happy. I was like, I sent a lot of screenshots and text messages, people saying congratulations and good work. So I'm looking forward to sending you one of those text messages here pretty soon.
Thanks.
Okay. Have a good one. We'll talk soon.
You too.